Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another edition of Hilaal Live. I'm your host, Luqman Shadrack. Thanks for watching us on channel 347, also on our live stream, www.hilal.tv. Last week we covered a very important amendment to the Divorce Amendment Act, and we had two studious attorneys in studio who gave us a lot of advice and a lot of wisdom with regards to how do we deal with this as a Muslim community in South Africa. Back in studio, I'd like to welcome first up Brother Igshaan Higgins. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to yourself and to the viewers.
Jazakallah so much for coming back into studio. And then also accompanying him is Faizel Bardien. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam to you and to all the viewers.
My absolute pleasure having you guys back as well. After our last session in studio, you guys then had a session at Masjid Al-Quds where you unpacked a bit more about the Divorce Amendment Act. Give us some feedback on how that session went.
Well, firstly, it was a very, very well received session.
Okay.
The presiding Imam was Sheikh Abdurrahman Alexander.
Oof, great guy.
And there was approximately between 200 and 250 ladies at that particular at the Masjid of Al-Quds. And we started off by just giving a history of why this Muslim marriages has been problematic in South Africa. And after doing that, Faizel went into the whole issue of the act itself.
Right.
And then we had a question and answer session. But that for me was the most interesting, because it seems like every lady out there seems to have some sort of question in the head about either marriage or death or a will or inheritance or maintenance. So, I mean, there's so many questions out there. And I think if we had to spend a whole day and the next day, we still wouldn't have been able to cover all of the queries on this. So which means the Muslim Ummah, or the community out there, there's a lot for them still to learn about the law vis-a-vis Islamic marriages. So I think we as lawyers and as activists and as the media, being the Hilaal TV and various others media entities, we have a lot of work to do in terms of giving the information over to our community. Because ultimately, if people don't know, then they're losing out.
But they could be led down the wrong path or being misinformed with regards to this amendment as well. Faizel, I would imagine that the crowd itself, was it made up of people that just wanted more information? Was it lawyers that attended? What was the crowd like?
It was basically the general public.
Okay.
So like Igshaan said, there was mostly ladies. However, we were on the radio to promote the program, and then Sheikh Alexander mentioned that, listen, if there are men that want to attend, we're not going to push them away. They were able to attend as well. So I think there might have been maybe a handful of men, but the majority were the women that attended. And we could see, we were well received, and all the questions, pointed out to us that there is a need for these workshops.
Brilliant.
And they actually asked us, please come back again to do a follow-up workshop and to do workshops on other legal matters like wills and estates.
Nice. Look, September's coming up, Wills Month. So that's a big thing as well. But when you were explaining the amendment as well, the Divorce Amendment Act, obviously you would read body language, you would read, the pennies dropped, or they have a question immediately. You would have allowed for a question and answer session as well. What was that response like when you were explaining what was happening?
I think, so Igshaan done the introduction.
Okay.
and also quoted many types of cases that we experience.
Right, and we're going to get through some of those cases a bit later
and
as
you
well.
could see the reaction of the ladies, because they could relate to these type of case studies and matters that we actually dealt with. So and the questions also showed us that there's a need for this type of education on this new statute, this new act that is now applicable to Muslim marriages as such.
Of course.
And I think, this education campaign that we're going on, I think it's only the start. We intend to do much more in Cape Town as well. And inshallah, I think more and more people will benefit from it. And we need to inform them as far as what's the act about, what's the consequences, how does it apply to them, etc., etc. That would
very vital, and we'll keep our viewers abreast with regards to developments where you are going to be doing other sessions as well. So, Igshaan, what were some of the questions? I mean, once you guys explained why you're there and how meaningful this is in their lives, what were some of the questions that came out of that session?
I think for me, what stood out, I mean, other than the normal divorce questions, and we can get into that a bit later, but for me, what stood out is a lot of women, their husbands die. And then they maybe are only entitled to the Sharia share, which is the 1/8.
Right.
And then the children want the widow now to sell the property in order to satisfy the Sharia shares.
Gotcha.
Now, in that instance, a lot of women have a lot of anxiety, because where must I go to?
They don't have usufruct in terms of...
They don't have a usufruct.
If the property sold, I mean, the property sold.
Sold, yeah. So, in that instance, what we said to the ladies, there is a thing called a Maintenance of Surviving Spouses Act, which is also applicable to Muslim marriages. So which means if the widow feels now that I am now going to sit in somebody's back room, or I might not even have a place to go to, then she can invoke that clause. I mean, it's a right in terms of South African law, say that I now need maintenance. So if the children are not going to look after her, or they're not going to do some form of undertaking, because normally what we tell the children in that instance, instead of your mom now claiming maintenance and consuming the estate, which means you don't get an inheritance, which means you cannot invoke then the Sharia estate. Instead of doing that, you rather give your mom a usufruct, so that she remains the queen of the castle. So that she doesn't feel that anxiety of having to stay in somebody else's house and being dependent on other people. So normally, with that act in hand, it's a good negotiating tool for a woman, a Muslim woman, to say that I would like to have a usufruct over this property, and when when I've died, then you can divide it up in accordance with Sharia.
So just to step back, usufruct for our viewers that don't understand the term, if you wouldn't mind just unpacking that very quickly.
A usufruct is basically a right to use a property as if you were the owner. In simple
So it's basically
terms.
living rights.
It's not even living rights. You got more than that. It's a right. You can even rent out that property.
I see.
During the time that you are alive, because you have a usufruct. You see, there's a distinction between a usufruct and a habitatio and usus. So the living right is more like the habitatio. So, but the point is, when we talk about usufruct, you remain the queen of the castle. And even if you move out or you go overseas, whatever, you can rent out the space.
So I'm sure, the penny must have dropped and people must have like, if I only knew this a long time ago. That can't be changed, unfortunately. Whatever happened to the property, it's done and dusted. But going forward, they can now protect themselves, Faizel. I mean, what are some of the things they can put in place?
So going forward, we always encourage do proper estate planning. So with your proper estate planning, you would include in your will so to state that, listen, is a usufruct applicable to the surviving spouse. So whether it's the husband or the wife, whoever survives, he or she is entitled to continue living in the property until date of death, and they can't transfer that right. That right ties with you as such. So if the parents are no longer there, now the children who are the registered owners can then deal with the property as they please.
Okay. But in terms of the Maintenance Act, in the event that the house gets sold, what happens in that instance?
Look, if the surviving spouse is going to apply and lodge a claim against the estate, so that executor wouldn't be able to first sell the house. They would have to first entertain the claim and see, listen, can they satisfy the claim, or are they going to negotiate with the claimant? Because if the claim is going to be processed and there isn't sufficient funds to settle the claim, that means they then have to sell the house in order to generate funds to pay the claim against the estate. There could be other claims as well, but normally a maintenance claim is a huge claim and could wipe out the estate.
Very interesting. Okay, we're going to take an ad break. When we come back, we're going to continue this conversation. More than welcome to WhatsApp us and let us know if you have any questions, queries, concerns around tonight's topic. We're going to take a short break. Thanks for watching us on Hilaal Live. Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Hilaal Live. I hope you're enjoying today's content. It's with regards to the Divorce Amendment Act. And brothers Igshaan and Faizel are here in studio to explain and unpack that a bit more. They had one session already at Masjid Al-Quds and it went down very well. Lots of questions and good feedback as well, gentlemen, which I'm sure that as you guys are unpacking this challenge, issue, amendment, act, that you're starting to learn a few things from the public as well.
Yeah. Look, we've been doing the media for a long time. We've been activists in this particular field for almost 30 years. And it seems like, we're now at that point where there's been a little bit of a victory in that there's legislation. But the problem now is that particular piece of legislation is problematic. I think every Muslim woman or man will find there's a bit of a problem with it. And I think especially the ulama bodies may have a problem with it. Especially now that the judge Islamic marriage. But what will have to happen, the activists will still have to continue their work in order to build up a jurisprudence. So, there's a lot of precedents all over the world. You have in India, there's good precedents for Islamic marriages. In Singapore, there's good precedents in various jurisdictions of the world where there's minority Muslims. So it's not I don't think it's going to be that difficult to build up a body of jurisprudence. But it's going to take a lot of work, because I doubt very much that a non-Muslim judge would want to pronounce on an Islamic marriage.
For sure.
I think the judges are very careful in that regard, because you do not want a tension between the law of the country and the Sharia law. So I do think that they will refer the religious issues to a member of the ulama, possibly as an assessor. But as I say, these things remain to be seen. We haven't yet got to that point where they know exactly what they're going to do.
So interesting times. I think we'll all be keeping a very close eye on proceedings going forward as well. But Faizel, in terms of the Muslim marriages, which of the landmark cases come to mind in terms of the Muslim marriages that actually stand out in South Africa?
Well, look, Igshaan has been very much involved with the landmark cases, and I think he's more suited to explain those cases. But I just wanted to add on to, the precedents that you just spoke to about Igshaan, and I'm dealing with one at the moment whereby there was a divorce, and there's a property. The property is only registered on the husband's name, but the wife is now claiming a portion of the estate. You understand? And obviously they're using this Divorce Amendment Act. But it's still early days. It's still early days. And I think we're going to have to go through the process and deal with it. Obviously, you want to try to settle matters if possible, because going to court and litigating is quite expensive,
Of course.
So, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot of test cases, but it's still new ground as such.
Right. Can I bring my cameras into court? Does this make for good TV? Could we get a lot of,
It should make for excellent TV.
Yeah,
Because I would imagine.
So now it's starting. Right. We knew it's going to happen. And that's why we jumped out with this education campaign regarding the act as such. But it's starting to happen now.
Are you doing sessions in Johannesburg and Durban as well? I remember last time you guys said you have linked up with other attorneys to educate and,
Yeah, we are going to be doing it in PE, Uitenhage, Durban, Johannesburg and Pretoria.
Okay.
In fact, we were supposed to do the Pretoria session or the Johannesburg session the end of this month, which is in a few days' time. But I think time just caught up with all the lawyers, and we've decided we're going to do it in October.
Okay, inshallah.
So people should watch that space.
Inshallah. Coming back to the landmark cases, that maybe you could give us a little bit of info, obviously without revealing the,
there was a few landmark
involved.
cases. Well, the first one, the major one for me, was the Daniels case, where the court for the first time recognized that recognized Muslim marriages in respect of the Interstate Succession Act. And but it was limited to a monogamous Muslim marriage, because they didn't want to recognize the potentially polygamous nature of Muslim marriages.
Okay.
So that was the first case, and that case went right up to the Constitutional Court.
And did he have more than one spouse?
No, not in that case.
Okay.
The case that I did, myself and Faizel did many years ago, was the Assam case. That was the second landmark case.
Right.
The Fatima Assam case. And in that case, there was 2 wives involved.
Okay.
And ultimately, it went to the Cape High Court. We won it in the Cape High Court. And then, of course, we took it to the Constitutional Court for confirmation.
Right.
When we got there, we obviously had to argue the issue of the polygamous nature of this marriage. And the judges were okay with it. The 11 judges all unanimously agreed that now Muslim marriages, the courts will recognize Muslim marriages even though it was polygamous or potentially polygamous. And then, of course, there was the Women's Legal Center case where they took the matter also right up to the Constitutional Court. I mean, there was a whole lot of processes from the Western Cape High Court to the SCA in Bloemfontein to the Constitutional Court. And they got the judges to actually compel the legislature to pass legislation in respect of Muslim marriages. And that is why we actually have an act now. So all these landmark cases led up to that particular case, and that case in turn led up to the legislation. But it's a very sad indictment on our society that after 350 years, our marriages were still not recognized. And in 30 years into democracy, it was still not recognized. So I think there's a problem, not necessarily with the politicians, but definitely with our community, in that we do not actually agree on things when we need to agree on things. And this is one of the examples where we couldn't actually agree on content. But you're never ever going to agree on everything.
Right. To a large degree, through everything that's been going on for the last couple of years with the Divorce Amendment Act, with the Muslim Marriages Bill, have the ulama been instrumental in giving their input?
I think this is what I'm saying. There was the ulama has been instrumental, but they couldn't agree.
Okay.
Now, if they had to agree at the beginning,
what were the contentious points?
There was a whole lot of contentious points. Whether it was the right to get married to a second wife, whether it was the age of consent of a girl of marriage. So there was a few items that was actually contentious. It's going to take us too long to go through
to unpack that.
But the point is, they couldn't agree, but I said they should have agreed to at least a draft initially.
Right. Yeah, at least it's there, you know.
Then it's there. Then you work on the jurisprudence after that, until you get to what you want. But you first need to get past that post. It's in Parliament. It's in the legislature. It's in the statute. Now you start working. So I think if we had to do that almost 30 years ago, we would have had a workable situation right now. So the work starts now.
Right.
We got that piece of legislation, so now we need to work on getting it to fit in with the way of life of the Muslims in South Africa.
Right. Faizel,
Yeah.
you know, going through all of this as well with Igshaan for the last 30 years, there must have been so much back and forth. There must have been so much learning in the process, so much education that you guys, and being at the forefront of this as well. So well done to you guys for you know, sticking it out. Because a lot of people would have said, you know, I had enough.
Yeah.
You know, I just want to,
Yeah.
I can imagine at
A lot of
times
people got
that,
tired along the way.
that must have come up. But in
Yeah,
closing,
but-
what should our Muslim community, both men and women, what should they take into consideration going forward now that we have these acts in place?
Yeah, so we got this act. This act is not perfect.
Yeah, right.
You know, and one of the questions was also, you know, does it conflict with the Sharia?
Right.
You understand? And that's why we want the ulama to you know, get involved as well.
Absolutely.
You know, so, but the act, when it comes to the division of assets, the act makes specific reference that the court must take into account any agreements that was concluded prior to divorce.
Okay.
So if you know, going to perform a nikah, if there's a marriage, and we always you know, promote or advocate that if you're getting married, conclude a Muslim marriage contract at least.
Right.
You understand? And that will detail, you know, the terms and conditions of your marriage in terms of Islamic, in terms of the Sharia as such. So then the court will have to take into account that agreement between the husband and wife, because the act refers to that, you see. So I think that is important for the couples to you know, conclude a contract when you are getting married.
Great advice, but we're gonna follow up with future sessions as well. It's Wills Month coming up. Maybe we'll do a session on that. How imperative it is, especially when it comes to Muslim marriages. But in general, you know, we have a large amount of non-Muslim audience that's watching as well. So maybe we'll go through that.
Especially the Maintenance of Surviving Spouses Act.
Yes.
Doesn't just apply to Muslims.
Correct.
It applies to the non-Muslim audience as well.
Absolutely.
And that's something we must seriously unpack.
Definitely. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. Assalamu
Shukran
alaikum.
very much. Walaikum salam.
Brother Igshaan and Brother Faizel in studio, giving us valuable information around our legal matters in South Africa. Do join us next week as we'll unpack another important issue as well. Thanks for joining us. Do stay tuned to Hilaal TV. But from all of us in Cape Town, on behalf of the Hilaal Live team, have a great evening. Assalamu alaikum.